All right. Here at Seattle Atheist Church, the members ourselves give many of the talks. We have a planning meeting each quarter that's open to the whole community. If you're here, that includes you. We consider a suggestion for talks that the members of the community would like to give. Today, join me in welcoming Mickey, who is going to be talking about the speed of lies. And let's put our hands together and mute yourself for a moment. Yeah. Okay.
As Mark Twain famously said, the truth, a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth can get its boots on. And we're seeing a lot of that these days. There's information available more readily than in newspapers or books. There's information available that is objectively completely false, and yet it spreads faster, more readily than the truth. And this is a problem that is not unique to one political ideology or one group of people. It's pervasive across all of our primary communication modality, the internet, and in particular, social media. And that's not because the information isn't available. There are reliable sources, like a number of fact-checking organizations that actually go back to the original sources and have a good track record of identifying true and false things. There are, Snopes is always a good place to go to find out if something is based in reality or completely fabricated. But still, the falsehoods spread and the truths don't. And the reason for this goes back to mimetics. I'm going to take just a minute and talk about what mimetics is, in case there are people who aren't familiar with it. Mimetics is the idea that thoughts in a society, ideas in a society, are communicable, not communicable, are propagating like organisms in an ecosystem. They are trying to get themselves replicated, and the ideas that are best at getting themselves replicated increase in prevalence in the population. And it's named after genetics, because it's the idea that the same behaviors that we observe in genes end up happening in memes, these units of concept. And just as an organism is made up of multiple genes, an ideology, a belief system, referred to as a meme complex, can be made up of multiple memes. You can actually see this in, for example, religion, a delightful topic for our atheist church. There are memes in some religions that say, if you stop believing in this religion, you will be tortured for eternity. And it turns out that that's a pretty effective way of getting people to not stop believing in the religion. And in fact, many of the major religions in the world have that meme as part of them, because it's very effective at getting itself spread. Because once someone catches that meme, they're not very good at uncatching it. Religions that have the meme, you are morally obligated to get other people to believe this, have more adherents than religions that don't have that meme. So what is it about lies that makes them so contagious, that makes them so mimetically transmissible? What is it about lies that gives them greater fitness in the genetic competition sense of fitness and spreads them through more of the population? Well, when you're looking at genes, they compete for fitness. They mutate over time, and the mutations compete for fitness in terms of how contagious they are to other people, how well they can propagate themselves. And when you have a high mutation rate, you tend to get a lot of highly competitive strains. We're seeing this with COVID, actually, which has a fairly high mutation rate and which is therefore able to churn out these variants that are, a shorter incubation period or a longer infectious period before showing symptoms, or that spread more readily, or that are better at evading vaccines in a vaccinated population, et cetera. We were able to eliminate smallpox and almost eliminate polio because they don't have a high mutation rate. They weren't able to evolve around the vaccines. Smallpox was a DNA virus rather than RNA virus, and so it was much, much, much more resistant to mutation. You can think of DNA as being a built-in checksum on RNA, so it catches replication errors a lot more easily because you can match up the two sides. So smallpox, low mutation rate, not very successful, couldn't evolve around things. Well, lies have the advantage that they don't have to stay connected to reality. So if I tell a lie and it is more interesting, it is less challenging, it is more warm, fuzzy feeling to people, then that variant is going to spread more readily. The truth has the unfortunate restriction that it has to match reality. So true ideas cannot mutate to increase their fitness. I lied to you all at the beginning of this talk. I'm not sorry, because I did it for good reason. I think it was ethical, but I lied to you. Mark Twain did not, in fact, come up with a lie can make it halfway around the world before the truth can get its boots on. People think he did, because ascribing things to Mark Twain is memorable, easy. The people who like that meme like to feel like they are showing off how literary they are and how smart one of their favorite authors is, etc. Actually, it goes way back further than that. The first firm attribution of the quote is Jonathan Swift, and it was probably around before he said it. But no one, that you will probably not remember that fact. I will probably not remember that fact in 6 months. And when someone says, a lie can make it halfway around the world before the truth can get its boots on, we'll probably think that was Mark Twain, wasn't it? Or possibly Churchill. A lot of things get attributed to Mark Twain, Churchill, Disraeli, George Bernard Shaw is a big one, Ben Franklin, right? People have like these, 5 or 6 names that quotes just get Oscar Wilde. Lots of quotes get attached to Oscar Wilde. And the reason they get attached to these people is it's more memorable than this was said by Parson William B. Smythe in 1786. No, it's like Churchill said. So lies have this ability to change themselves to better match what is contagious. And truth doesn't. Truth is stuck being true. And unfortunately, there are a lot of ways to be more contagious as long as you don't have to stay connected to reality. As we're seeing with Omicron right now, it's not actually probably more contagious. This is good news, by the way. It's really good news. What it has is a much shorter incubation period, which can give the same shape of curve as more contagious. Can infect 3 people in 4 days, or can infect 1 person in 2 days. Actually look the same. They have the same shape of curve. You don't find out which it is until you get to the point where the curve stops. Because if the reason it was going up so steeply was because it was more contagious, it's going to go higher. But if the reason it was going up more steeply is because of a shorter incubation period, it actually caps out earlier than you'd expect. And that's what we hope. It's early days, but we think that may be what we're seeing with Omicron. Anyway, some good news there for everyone. Merry Christmas. But in any case, because there are so many ways for ideas to become better at replicating themselves, there are lots of ways for lies to spread. A lie can become appealing to more people, maybe by making itself less of a divergence from reality or more of a divergence from reality, because lies don't care. But a lie can make itself more appealing to people, or it can make itself so exciting that people just have to talk about, oh my God, did you hear that Clinton is one of the child molesters? That's a very, very attractive meme to a certain set of the population. Oh my God, can you believe what Trump said, right? And these things, outrage is very contagious. But the reason outrage is very contagious, and this is something that this only showed up in the research a few years ago, actually. The reason outrage is so contagious is because self-righteousness gives you a dopamine hit. Thinking that you are better than other people gives you a hit of dopamine, the brain's intrinsic reward mechanism. So anything that makes you feel smarter, more ethical, like a better person, in the know, all of these things are appealing to you because they are addictive. They give you the same compelling reward as a drug like cocaine or sugar. You know that sugar gives you a dopamine hit that's as powerful as some of the major addictive drugs. Just a little note there for people living in America's cafeteria food culture. Self-righteousness, the sense of being part of the special people, is an extremely compelling drug. And so ideas that make you feel self-righteous are ideas that are better at spreading themselves. This is part of what creates the polarization in the online echo chambers, is that you can be part of a group that agrees with you about everything. And being part of that group, it gives you a sense of belonging and a sense of being righter than the other people. This is particularly dangerous for people who are empirically minded. Because one of the ways that we find truth is the scientific method. And the heart of the scientific method is disproving hypotheses. It's not about proving hypotheses. It's very, very hard to prove something true. You would have to prove it true in every possible case, in every possible place the case could apply. It's very difficult. But to disprove something, all you need is a single counterexample or a single logical contradiction. So disproving things, both straightforward and definitive. Proving things, not so much so. So if you're given a choice between an idea that confirms what you already believe and an idea that forces you to change your beliefs, always pick the idea that forces you to change your beliefs, assuming they're both true, because you will get more correct knowledge about the universe. We want, as scientists, as empiricists, we want to be getting disconfirming evidence. We want to be getting new information that changes what we believe, because there's more information content in it. It's more valuable to us. It makes us less wrong every time. But as people driving around a monkey suit, as humans with human wiring, we want confirming evidence. We want to know we were right. We want to believe things that match what we already believe. There's a thing called consistency bias. If you can get someone to say that they are a charitable person, they will donate a lot more money. Because having said it, they want to keep, believing it. They want to act accordingly to it. They want to have a consistent presentation to the rest of the world that matches what they've said. And this applies to ideas as well. If people believe one thing, they're going to want to believe things that are consistent with it. And people are very resistant to changing their minds. Eva, this is a bit of a shout out for your upcoming talk. How do you, as a person who is an empiricist, change your mind? How do you become welcoming to disconfirming evidence? Unfortunately, because of this human bias toward, so there's also confirmation bias. We like ideas that confirm what we already believe. And yet, we really should be looking for ideas that contradict it. One of the unfortunate realities is that lies can change themselves to confirm what we already believe and therefore be naturally better at spreading. This is why in my last talk I said one thing to do is to look out for ideas that seem too good to be true. And look out for ideas that give you a strong emotional feeling. Because those are both tactics that a lie can evolve into in this limited resource competition, zero-sum game of we can only believe so many things, and there are only so many people. Having a strong emotional reaction for or against is one of the things that makes ideas survive better and therefore increase in prevalence in the population. And confirming what we already believe is one of the things that makes ideas spread better and increase their prevalence in the population. So when you're dealing with, there we go. The last thing is, when you're dealing with the evolution of ideas in the wild, in a population, that's analogous to having a virus evolve around, vaccine prevalence. AIDS became much less virulent over the past couple of decades because people started wearing condoms, which made it harder to transmit. If you make a disease harder to transmit, it has to be less likely to kill people off before they can transmit it. This, by the way, is part of why it's so important to wear your mask, because when you wear your mask, you make it less likely for COVID to be transmitted, which is a selection pressure toward being less virulent. Well, by being a community that is careful to check our ideas before we spread them, we make those ideas, we apply a selection pressure to those ideas to adhere more closely to reality, to be more true, less provably false. But that's what happens in the state of nature. That's what happens when a life form is competing in an ecosystem, or a virus is competing to evolve around protections and precautions. What we're facing now in the modern social media online world is more akin to germ warfare. We're dealing with a situation where ideas are being weaponized deliberately to be contagious and damaging. This happens not just in the political arena. It does happen in the political arena. One of the things that has been well substantiated by the various truth-checking organizations is that a lot of the political memes around the 2016 election were being produced and disseminated by groups funded directly by the Russian government. It was a very, very successful propaganda campaign, because they designed ideas that were contagious and then they seeded them in the population. On both sides, by the way. It wasn't just, oh, they lied to those silly conservatives. They lied to the silly liberals too. And they decreased communication and increased social dissension. Pretty dangerous pathogen there, right? But it also happens every day. Advertising is a game of mimetic warfare, because advertisers are constantly trying to persuade us that it's worth spending an extra 30% to get a particular word on the packaging of the item you're buying. And it works. That is a mild illness. It just means we spend money we don't need to spend, and most of us can more or less handle that, disease burden. But that doesn't make it harmless. We'd all be better off if we were immune to advertising. Which is why, we check the facts against things like Consumer Reports, which actually tests the claims of products and makes sure to, again, gives us an empirical answer to how well does this particular brand of washing machine wash your clothes, right? So when we're dealing with the weaponization of ideas, again, lies can not only adapt themselves to be more readily transmitted or more persistent once transmitted, lies can be adapted. It's much harder to adapt truth. And the really tricky thing here, of course, is that not only do we have people evolving these lies, they're able to tell how successful they are. This is why all the clickbait headlines look the same. The tragedy of Mark Ruffalo is heartbreaking. The tragedy of the tragedy of Ben Affleck is heartbreaking. No one can believe the tragedy of Leonardo DiCaprio. I have seen that template stuck on 20, 30 different celebrity names. I can tell because of how very prevalent it is that a lot of people click that. More than clicked, the misery of Mark Ruffalo is heartbreaking, or the tragedy of Leonardo DiCaprio is beyond belief, right? Because they do A/B testing. They put up half of their ads with this variant and half with that, and the one that gets more people to click it is the one they put the money toward, and then they edit, they mutate from there, right? And very rapidly converge on things that are really compelling to a particular demographic. And this is the last piece of why lies spread so well, which is there are 8 billion people in the world now? There are a lot of billion people in the world. And a lot of them are on the internet. Billions and billions of people are on the internet, on social media, every day. Facebook hit 2 billion daily visitors like 4 years ago. 2 billion people daily visit a single website, right? And that means that an idea that appeals really hard to 500 people can find the community of 500 people that has accreted around that kind of idea and infect them really rapidly. JFK Jr. is coming back from the dead in Dallas right now. It's hard to come up with a more absurd idea than that. And QAnon is really hardcore conservative, and yet a QAnon group of people got so infected by the idea that JFK Jr. was coming back from the dead right now that they all went to Dallas and stayed there for months in hotels, waiting for JFK Jr. to come back from the dead and save the world. A liberal to come back from the dead and save the world. Because an idea doesn't have to be true, it just has to be successful. And it doesn't have to be successful with the entire population. It can be successful for just you. So the other thing to remember when you're evaluating an idea is you have no way of knowing how many other people are even being shown that idea. Even if it's being shared to you by a friend, you have no idea whether your friend applied the appropriate filters or your friend got this advertising particularly because it would appeal to them as shown by this machine learning algorithm or that machine learning algorithm, or this A/B test, right? So when you encounter an idea that is spreading like wildfire on either side of an ideological divide, it's worth stopping and going, hey, is that an idea that is successful because it has been fine-tuned either by evolution or by mimetic warfare? Is that an idea that is successful because it's been designed to be successful? Or is it an idea that's successful because it's true and valuable? This mask here, this is a GVS Ellipse P100 mask. It filters out 99.97% of particulates. It's wonderful. It has a flaw. That's an exhalation valve. And of course, exhalation valves do nothing to protect the people around you. I just lied to you again. Exhalation valves do a lot to protect the people around you. It turns out, empirical studies, that an exhalation valve like this, because of the turbulent airflow going through it, is about as effective at blocking outgoing viral particles as a cloth mask. So we have the idea. Exhalation valves make a mask worthless for the people around you. They're selfish. They only protect you. And that was a very successful idea because it appealed to our fears about COVID. Oh my God, everyone around us is a plague-bearing zombie. And the ones who are wearing the mask under their nose or the ones who are wearing masks without flow valves are even more so plague-bearing zombies. And in fact, they're unethical, uncaring plague-bearing zombies. They don't even care to protect the people around them. Unlike us good people, there's that dopamine hit from self-righteousness, right? Well, it turns out that people wearing the masks under their nose, yeah, it's not actually doing any good for them or anyone else. And that's a really dangerous idea that people have spread, is that that's still wearing a mask. But no, we were wrong about outflow valves. Outflow valves are actually, they're not horrible. They're as good as a cloth mask properly worn and way better than the cloth mask worn around your neck as a cute little, accessory. On the other hand, quick plug here, this is a mask that has been modded to have an outflow filter as well, a P100 outflow filter. I did the mod. There's a very preliminary rendition of an instruction tutorial that Eva put up on her Facebook. If you're interested, it takes about 20 minutes. to turn this into this. And if you're hardcore interested in making sure you don't spread COVID, this is basically guaranteed to not give COVID to someone else if you have COVID. And it's really effective, about 8 times as effective as a cloth mask, and about 2 or 3 times as effective as a properly fitted, fully closed N95 mask. By the way, this is in fact a plug for get a P100 mask. If you're going to be going out shopping, if you're going to be going out and being in crowds for any purpose, they look kind of badass, and they are much better protection than an N95 mask. And if you want to make sure you're protecting the people around you even better than wearing a cloth mask, check out the tutorial on Eva's blog. It's $45 to make the mask, parts and labor, and it takes about 20 minutes to mod it. So that idea, by the way, is going to spread much less well than someone going, oh my God, outflow valves don't protect people around you at all. I can't believe how selfish those conservatives are, that they don't even bother wearing masks that protect other people. They have outflow valves in them. How can they be so uncaring? Because that has all of the attributes of a compelling idea. Strong emotional reaction, makes us feel self-righteous, gives us a nice us versus them, and we're on the side of right and justice feeling. So it's really contagious. So be skeptical of it. The idea that outflow valves are actually pretty okay and people who are wearing masks with outflow valves, which are way more comfortable, actually aren't laughing in the face of other people's well-being. They're just, not being quite as perfectly careful as they might be. That's a really hard sell in our community. It would go like wildfire through a conservative leaning but not hardcore masks are bad and killing our children with carbon dioxide. Masks are killing our children with carbon dioxide really, really spread well through the conservative ecosystem, where children do it for the children. Children are very precious. Liberals, actually, we don't tend to be as willing to drop every other ethical concern because of the children. Because there are other ethical concerns. It's, we have to think about ethics and calculate and figure out the greatest good for the greatest number. Which means we are, possibly less careful with children. No. We are so much more careful with children's lives. We don't even want them to go back to school. We want to make sure that they are safe by keeping them home. Because that's a really appealing idea, is that sending kids back to school is, you see how this works, right? A really compelling idea that confirms our in-group membership, that is consistent with other things we've said before, that makes us look good and feel good about ourselves. That idea is going to spread through the population really easily. And it's going to stay in the population. It's going to be a very successful little organism. And an idea that challenges that, hey, I was really worried about Omicron. And I said, watch out, Omicron's going to be horrible. It's doing this exponential growth and it's going to infect this big chunk of the population. I was wrong. Accepting that I was wrong took work. I would much rather have just not said anything about it and let people keep believing, oh my God, it's this worst thing ever. This is terrifying. It's still pretty bad. We're still having, 7% of the London population has actually gotten Omicron in the past 3 weeks, roughly. On the other hand, it's only 7%. It's not 30 or 60%, which is what the original numbers were looking like. So that's a big win. Still, 7% of the population getting Omicron is going to be a problem, but, it is slowed down by the vaccines. You're only about 30% as likely to get hospitalized or die if you're vaccinated and boosted than if you're immunologically naive. That's pretty good, It's not great, but it's better than it might be. But it was really hard to make myself go out and look for the information that said I was wrong. Because it's much more appealing to believe that the things I said are still true and things that match that are still true. And I could find lots of sources that said I was still right. But I looked for the ones that said I was wrong. And when I found out they were wrong, I said, hey, everybody, I was wrong. Check it out. Here's something that's more accurate. Here's some new information. If you find something that's true and you fact check it and you verify that it is true, one way you can spread truth more loudly is spread truth more loudly. Hey, everyone, there's this cool thing. Here is a true fact that I verified with Snopes and also with factcheck.org or whatever it is. I can't remember I'm terrible at checking my facts because I'm human. But, when there's a specific fact that's really appealing or really distressing, I stop and check. Because it's really embarrassing when I post something to my friends and they're like, didn't you Snopes? Do you even Snopes, bro? And that's the other thing we can do as an atheist community, to slow down the speed of lies and to help truth compete in our ecosystem, is fact check each other. Just because I say something, don't go, oh, wow, let's tell everyone about this. Mickey said it. Mickey's reliable. Mickey checks her facts. Well, I try. I make mistakes too. If we hold each other accountable, and that includes social accountability, that includes going, you really ought to check with Snopes before you post that. I'm not saying be mean to people, but I'm saying use social pressure to encourage people to check their facts. And when someone posts something true, go, oh, thanks, that changed my mind. And when someone posts something false, go, you probably want to change that. You credited that to the wrong person. That was actually said, that was actually done by Rosalind Carter, not by Watson and Crick. So yeah, lies have a huge advantage. We have to work hard to make our community more immune to the spread of lies, make it a more challenging environment, reduce the pathogenicity of the lies that get through, and to spread truth and help it become more prevalent in our ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. Let's all unmute ourselves for a moment and give a round of applause.